I'm here today to brief you on the latest developments related to the Syrian government's official request addressed to the Secretary General of the United Nations to provide his assistance to the Syrian government in order to investigate the use of chemical materials in the location of Khan al-Asal in Aleppo on the 19th of March. 40 days have elapsed since the Syrian government submitted its official request to the Secretary General. 40 days the Syrian government has been cooperating intensively with the SG as well as with his senior officials and we are still waiting for reaching to any swift and happy conclusion. Yet, you may have heard many trumped up charges and fraudulent accusations orchestrated by here and there against the Syrian government. And I'm here today to brief you, then to answer your questions appropriately so that you will be all aware of where we are right now with this regard. In literature, as you know, you could tell a story by epiphany. In politics, you don't. In politics, we cannot tell a story by epiphany, especially when the issue is so prominent, so delicate, so dangerous, such as the use of chemical weapons somewhere in this world. The issue of chemical weapons in Syria has been part, as you know, of the media, political, and diplomatic campaign of incitement on the government of the Syrian Arab Republic, aiming at increasing pressure on the government, increasing the political pressure on the Syrian government. This hostile campaign is led by some parties that have made no secret of their hostility and feuds towards Syria since the beginning of the current crisis. The Syrian government has always emphasized in Damascus, the capital, as well as in here, that it will not use, if it possesses, any chemical weapons against its own people. And I stress this point, which has been highly controversial and manipulated by the enemies of Syria to serve their hidden agendas. The government of Syria initiated the request to the United Nations Secretary General for a speedy investigation to expose the perpetrators of the heinous crime in the area of Khan al-Asal that occurred on March 19th, 2013. The important part of the story, ladies and gentlemen, is that few hours only separated the occurrence of this crime in Khan al-Asal and the submitting of the Syrian official request to the Secretary General. More or less precisely 18 hours had elapsed between the moment the rocket landed in Khan al-Asal and the Syrian official move requesting the SG to assist in investigating this attack. That was from the beginning a serious and credible sign of the Syrian government's commitment towards investigating what happened and identifying who did it. During those few hours, all charges for this crime were directed at the Syrian government. Charges that were swiftly promoted by many political and media in the Arab, regional, and international circles, without any corroborated facts. Serious experts and serious diplomats do not judge serious accusations through intelligence assessments, but rather through corroborated facts. And no need to draw your kind attention to the very ugly manipulation of the file of the so-called Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. A file that was open for 18 years through UNSCOM and UNMOVIC investigation. An investigation that cost the Iraqi people billions of dollars, monopolized the expertise of dignitaries in the UN as well as outside of the UN. And after 18 years of so-called investigation, these two commissions of investigations, headed by a former IAEA inspector, Director General, concluded that they didn't find anything in Iraq. But they were not even given the opportunity to underscore this dramatic conclusion in the archives of the Security Council. And you all know the rest of the story. When the archives of the so-called investigation mission of the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction were put in special cages, sealed, and not allowed to be reopened before 60 years. So none of us here present will know, officially speaking, the contents of these documents and archives. But we all know for sure that the final conclusion was that they didn't find anything in Iraq. The initiative of the Syrian government requesting investigation in Khan al-Asal deflated this campaign I'm referring to, which led the French and the British delegations to try to incite this campaign again and undermine the Syrian initiative by asking for an investigation into the alleged use of chemical weapons in other parts of Syria. Despite our observations on the request submitted by France and Britain and the subsequent serious request submitted by Qatar to the Secretary General claiming the use of chemical weapons in other parts of Syria, without even mentioning the date of the incident or the designated area where it took place. And in spite of the fact that these requests come from countries who declared hostility to Syria publicly since the beginning of the crisis. Despite of all this and that, the Syrian government is still waiting to receive information on these allegations. Those mentioned countries are required to provide credible information about the alleged incidents to be evaluated and assessed. There cannot be at any time a mission of investigation of a limited number of people moving freely on the Syrian territory just on the basis of letters containing unfounded allegations and have clear instigating goals. We expect from the Secretariat not to be part of this campaign against Syria, because what happened in Iraq, as I said, is still alive in our minds till this very moment. Our region, ladies and gentlemen, is still living the consequences of such false allegations. The Syrian government cooperation with the Secretariat has always been honest and clear, and we requested for an investigation in the incident of Khan al-Assal, as I said, hours after the incident took place. The Syrian government is still willing to receive the investigation team in even less than 24 hours, based on the agreement that has been reached with Mrs. Kane on April 4th, 2013. The Syrian government did not close the doors of the United Nations and the investigation mission to look into any other allegations. But the principles of respecting international law and the Charter of the United Nations require a strict respect of the sovereignty of states, member states, and accordingly, the details of any incident that foreign countries claimed they occurred on the territory of the Syrian Arab Republic should be shared with the Syrian government, as it is the main concerned party. It's very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, to know that these information related or relevant to the French, British, and Qatari allegations have not been shared yet with any of the members of the Security Council. None of the members of the Security Council is aware of the content of these allegations. So people who are basically responsible for maintaining peace and security in the world are not aware of any details related to these allegations. And the funny part of the story is that members of the Security Council have been waiting for 40 days to be briefed by somebody, the Secretary General himself, if he knows, if he is aware, or Mrs. Kane, or anybody else. So these loopholes are very indicative of the fact that the whole story about the other allegations is rather irrelevant to the main issue, which is what happened in Khan al-Assad. Regrettably, we have not received until today, in spite of our repeated requests, any information on those allegations. But the Secretariat, as you know, has been diligently releasing statements that might give the impression that the Syrian government is not cooperating with the UN in conducting this investigation. One day we hear the spokesperson calling on the Syrian government to cooperate. The other day we hear somebody else in The Hague or somewhere else that the UN is still waiting for the Syrian government to allow the team to deploy in Syria. Then we hear on another occasion another statement, alarming statement, saying that somebody, without naming him, is taking seriously the allegations provided to him by one member state. And all these alarming statements are not shared with the Syrian government, neither with the members of the Security Council. So we are moving in a vacuum, seemingly, on a very crucial issue. I see today myself obliged to read what is stated in a letter by Mrs. Angela Kane, sent on April the 3rd, 2013, which confirmed that, and let me read out the content of her letter. We have it. I quote, "I wish to confirm that the investigation mission will look at the specific incident brought to his attention, to the Secretary General's attention, by your government, and investigate the facts related to the reported incident on 19th March 2013 at Khan al-Assal in Aleppo Governorate. The mission will gather relevant data and undertake the necessary analysis for this purpose." Then, in this connection, the Secretary General continues to assess the reports submitted by the governments of France and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, pursuant to their joint request of 21st March 2013, to which the Secretary General had referred in his above-mentioned letter. The Secretary General continues to assess, but he is committing himself, in the first paragraph, to investigate into the specific incident that took place in Khan al-Assal.